It's historic confirmation with Secretary Austin being installed as the Secretary of Defense, first black Secretary of Defense, exemplary military career. But he's coming into a complicated set of policy issues. Will he continue the confrontational approach of the Trump administration vis-a-vis China? How will the Department of Defense posture itself as the Biden administration seeks to re-enter the agreement with our allies with Iran, the JCPOA? Those are two major questions before Secretary Austin, in addition to what you flagged, which are the budget questions. A lot of pressure coming in from the left flank of the Democratic Party to spend less on our national defense.
Yeah, I want to dig into that a little bit more with you, John, because from an investor standpoint, I mean, you look at some of those, defense stocks, they've really, dead money, I don't think even does it justice. I mean, many of them are still down double digits over the last 12 months. And I think a lot of the expectation that's baked into those stock prices right now is around what that defense budget is going to look like and whether we've already seen a peak. How do you think about it?
Sure thing. Thanks, Morgan. And just a quick apology to Guy. I forgot my jacket today, but it is a Friday
shucks.
afternoon. Yeah. But good to see you, Roger. In terms of the budget, I mean, the way that I would think about it, big picture, is yes, there is certainly going to be pressure on the defense budget because of how far it's come recently. The way I would think about it is as follows. Go back to 2010, when deficit concerns were at their peak. You had the Tea Party pushing for less money. What the Obama administration did at the time was come out with a plan, a 10-year plan, and their initial take on that 10-year plan was to cut $400 billion from the defense budget over 10 years. Now, here's the tricky thing about DC budgeting is that cutting the defense budget is actually slowing the rate of growth. So fast forward to today. If the Biden administration were to come up and say, we're going to flatline the defense budget for 10 years, that would save $535 billion. There's your savings. If they were to say, we're going to cut the defense budget by 3% year over year over year over year for 10 years, probably a bit aggressive. Let's just say they did. That would be a massive $1.6 trillion of savings. So those are sort of parameters I would think about. And from an industry and stock perspective, companies I think can navigate that all right, investing in the growers, divesting the laggards. From a stock perspective, that is indeed the challenge. We can talk about that a little bit more later in terms of thinking about what the sustainability is of some of the earnings streams that are coming into these companies right now.
Well, John, my question to you real quick, is it reflected in the stocks already? I don't want to get all that granular, but you look at like a Lockheed Martin, for example, which topped out February of last year, probably $100 or so lower than where it traded. And it's been trading awful over the last month or so. I mean, of everything you're saying, is it reflected in a lot of these names, in your opinion?
If you look at relative valuations to the market, Guy, these names writ broadly are trading at roughly, call it the 2012 to 2014 period on a relative basis. I mean, for instance, right now, on some defense stocks, you can get double the free cash flow yield versus the XLI. You haven't seen that kind of, I'd say, relative valuation, again, for quite a few years. So there is a lot of, I think, of skepticism currently reflected in shares right now. I think the challenge is getting someone to sort of step over the line and say, oh, that's where I want to be now, given expectations around recovery. This is not a recovery industry. Given expectations around the deficit conversation. As I mentioned, the political alignment around whether deficits matter or not is going to be something that matters this year. And maybe it's the August debt ceiling, which will be the catalyst to make people talk about that a little bit more here. So I think there's still sensing a little bit of trepidation.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.